Hello, Jai Swaminarayan. Today we are reading from another section of the Vachanamrut, specifically Sārangpur 11, which is simply titled Personal Endeavor. Let's get right into it. On Shravan Vadhi Amas, Samvat 1877, which is equivalent to the 7th of September 1820, Swami Sri Sahajanand Ji Maharaj was sitting on a large decorated cot on the veranda outside the north-facing rooms of Jiva Khachar's Darbar in Sārangpur. He was dressed entirely in white clothes. At that time, an assembly of munis, scholars, as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him. Thereupon, Muktanand Swami asked a question. Personal endeavor is mentioned in the scriptures, but how much is actually achieved by personal endeavor, and how much is achieved by God's grace? I'm really liking Muktanand Swami's questions. He's always asking the right ones. Very applicable. Sriji Maharaj explained, one who, by the words of the Satguru, the true teacher, and the scriptures, has attained firm vairagya, which is dispassion for worldly things, material pleasures, that sort, has firm shraddha, firm faith, strictly observes the 8 aspects of brahmacharya, the way of the ultimate, conserving the vital energy with the right actions, the right words, and the right deeds, has affinity towards non-violence, ahimsa, or otherwise translated to least harm, and absolutely firmly realizes oneself to be the Atma, the true self, beyond the body, beyond the mind, is relieved from the burden of births and deaths which hangs over one's head. Then, just like a grain of rice that has had its outer chaff removed does not grow, a mukta, a liberated being, who has the virtues just mentioned, is freed from eternal ignorance in the form of Maya, God's material existence. They are thereby freed from the cycle of births and deaths and attains the state of Atma realization, self-realization. This much can be achieved by personal endeavor. In fact, God's grace is only bestowed upon one who has such characteristics. When one attains the grace of God, one becomes an ekantik bhakta, true and absolute devotee. Even the shrutis, the scriptures, proclaim, Niranjanaha paramam samyam upaiti, which is from the Mundaka Upanishad, 3rd canto, 3rd chapter, 1st verse. The meaning of this Vedic verse is that a person who is free from the blemishes of Maya attains qualities similar to those of God. That is, just as God is never bound by any pure or impure karmas, actions, that he may perform, the mukta, the liberated being, is also never bound by pure or impure karmas. Because of her affection, Lakshmiji sometimes becomes absorbed in God's form, whereas on other occasions, while remaining separate from God, she remains in God's service. In the same manner, out of intense love, the devotee also becomes absorbed in God, and at other times they remain separate and serves God. Moreover, just as God is independent, that devotee also becomes independent. Such powers can be attained only by the grace of God. Thereafter, Nityanand Swami asked, God's grace is bestowed upon those who has imbibed all of these characteristics perfectly. But what becomes of one who has some deficiency in cultivating these characteristics? Shriji Maharaj replied, if a person has a deficiency in any of the virtues of vairagya, worldly dispassion, brahmacharya, conserving the vital energies, shraddha, faith, ahimsa, least harm, and atma realization, understanding one's true self, then they do not attain the ultimate liberation, i.e., God's Akshardham. Instead, they attain some other abode of God. If they have even more worldly desires remaining, they attain the realms of the devas, the deities, which in the moksha dharma are described as being like narak, like hell, compared to the abode of God. Then, after being a deva, a deity, they return to being a human. And from being a human, they again become a deva. The verse, Aneka janma sansiddhas tatoho yati param gatim, from the 6th verse of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 45th verse, a yogi who has become realized after many lives attains the highest state of enlightenment. Explains that a devotee of God who has worldly desires does not go to narak, nor do they have to undergo births and deaths in the cycle of 8.4 million life forms. Instead, they take innumerable births as a deva and a human being. Then, only when they develop the previously described virtues of vairagya, brahmacharya, etc., do they become worthy of attaining the grace of God. And they then become an ekantik bhakta, a true devotee of God, and attain their gunatit abode, their abode beyond the 3 gunas, the qualities of material existence. Tamas, darkness, rajas, passion, and sattva, purity. Akshardham. Hence, whether it takes one life or innumerable lives, only when one develops the previously described characteristics and becomes extremely free of worldly desires does one become worthy of attaining the grace of God, and only then will one attain ultimate liberation. Without it, one will definitely not attain it. Then, Nrsimhanand Swami asked, is there a method by which one can eradicate all of one's deficiencies within this very lifetime? Shriji Maharaj replied, if a person becomes extremely vigilant and determined, then all of their deficiencies can be eradicated within this very lifetime. If their deficiencies have not been eradicated while alive, and if they were to become free of worldly desires and develop intense love for God during their last moments, then even in those last moments God would shower His grace upon them, and they would attain the abode of God. Thus, whether after one life or after countless lives, or even in the last moments before one dies, should a devotee's vrittis, their thought forces, become intensely focused on God, no deficiency would remain in that devotee. All right, thank you for listening. That was the end of Sārangpur 11 on personal endeavor. So, to me it sounds like it is very much personal endeavor that gets you most of the way there, and then God grants the final grace after you have worked so hard to develop qualities such as vairagya, worldly dispassion, ahimsa, least harm, brahmacharya, conserving the sexual energies, shraddha, faith, and the like. Jai Swaminarayan.